Hello, welcome to the Cloud Journal YouTube channel. My name is Mudita Jayat Chaturanga. I am a technical consultant primarily focused in designing, deploying, and supporting enterprise collaboration and information security solutions using Microsoft technologies. Below in the description, I will post links to my blog and Twitter handle so you can read more about these technologies in my blog and follow me on Twitter to stay up to date with latest in these technologies. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date when new videos are posted. In this video, I will be talking about Microsoft Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. Without further ado, let's get on with the demo. To access Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, you can use Office 365 Admin Center or navigate to protection.office.com URL and sign in using your credentials. Once you sign into Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, you will be presented with the home page as you can see in this screen. Homepage consists of multiple tiles that you can customize to remove or add more, will allow you to perform certain tasks easily. For example, as you can see in the threat management tile, you can view the quarantine or you can create a new spam policy with just a click of a button. On the left hand side of this screen, you have your sidebar, which will allow you to view other sections and options under them. When you go to alerts and when you click on a dashboard, you will be able to see an overview of the current status in your Office 365 environment. There are multiple tiles as with the home page where you can see different details based on the information you need. Also, you will be able to create new alert policy or view or edit alert policies as you prefer using the tiles in this screen. However, unlike with homepage, you will not be able to customize this screen. To view all alerts, you can click on the alerts, view alerts section and you can see all the alerts in your environment. To view the specifics of a particular alert, you can click on that. And on the right hand side, you will be able to see a summary of the event that has caused this alert. If you're satisfied with the details in this alert and if you are working on this particular alert, you can mark it as resolved. And then you can select the status, current status, whether you are investigating or whether you're resolving or whether you are going to dismiss the event. So I'm happy with the details that I have received in this alert and I'm going to mark it as resolved since it requires no further action. And I can provide a comment as to why I'm changing the status of this particular alert and then click save. And the status of that alert will be marked as resolved. And when you refresh the screen, you will see that that alert has disappeared from this screen and active alerts are still visible in this particular screen. So if you have many alerts in this particular screen, what you can do is you can filter them based on the status, the policy, contributing user, a time range, severity, or the category. The next one is alert policies. Alert policies will help you with creating monitoring actions that will help you with generating alerts. There are a couple of alert policies created by Office 365 system that you will not be able to delete. You can see those alert policies in the bold text in this column. As you can see here, I have created 3 alert policies and currently all of them are in the switched on status. These policies are monitoring my environment and when an action happens that matches the criteria that I have defined, it will trigger an alert and I will be able to view the alert in the view alerts section. To create a new alert policy, you can click on this new alert policy button and proceed with the wizard to create a policy. As you can see here, you can provide a name and a description and you can pick a severity of the alert generated by this particular policy. And then you can pick a category that you want to this policy to be fall in. And then you can click next and you can select the activity. So based on this activity, you will be able to define conditions. So I'm going to say create a mail forward redirect rule. So this policy will monitor my environment for this particular activity, and then I can add additional conditions to narrow down this specific policy. If I define a user, then this policy will monitor this particular user for creating any forward or redirect rules of mails. And once it is done, I can define how this alert to be triggered. If I want an alert to be triggered every time an activity matches the rule, or if there needs to be a minimum number of activities happened before an alert be generated, or the volume of matched activities becomes unusual. If you if you select when the volume of matched activities becomes unusual, it will take about 7 days to build up a baseline for your environment, and Office 365 will match any active number of activities against the build baseline. And then you can define how you want to receive email notifications. You can define the recipients, and you can define the limit, daily notification limit as well. Once that is done, you can click next, and you can review your settings here, and then you can switch on the policy right away, or you can keep it off and switch on later on. I'm just going to say yes, turn it on right away, and click finish. Once the policy is created, on the right hand side you can see the summary again. If you are happy with it, you can click close, or else you can edit these options and tune it the way you want. Managed Advanced Alerts requires Office 365 Cloud App Security, which is a separate product. I will not be talking about this product, and I'm just going to skip to permissions section. So permission section has multiple security permissions that are relevant for your organization, for your users. Usually global administrators in Office 365 have the ultimate level of permissions across all the products in Office 365. However, in the Security and Compliance Center, to perform certain tasks, even global administrators are required to have certain permission groups assigned. So as you can see here, there are multiple permission groups. You can click on each of these groups to see what are the permissions and the roles that these permission groups are holding. Also, the description of the particular permission group and the list of members of that particular group. You can add users to this group, and the users will be able to perform this task listed here. If you want to start a new group, if you are not satisfied with this particular permission group and you want to create a new group, you can do so by copy role group button here. When you click that, this wizard will open a new wizard to create a permission group with the current configuration of this particular group, and you will be able to fine tune it and create a new group starting from this particular permission group. The next one is classifications. We are using classifications to help identify or categorize our content or our data that is stored in Exchange email, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, or in Office 365 groups. So these labels will help users to tag their documents so that you will be able to apply certain protection rules against those labels as well. So for example, if you have confidential data in SharePoint Online and you want to monitor them using a data loss prevention policy, what you can do is you can create a label and apply that label automatically to your confidential data based on a keyword or a specific sensitive information type, and create a data loss prevention policy to monitor the content of that particular location. So as you can see here, we have uh, couple of labels created. What we are going to do now is we are going to create a label. You can click on the button and provide a name. I'm going to say label 1, and you can provide a description for this particular label and then click next. And you can switch on retention for this particular label. When you switch on retention, you can retain the content for specific duration, and then you can decide what you want to do after that particular duration. Or else you can define not to retain the content and to delete it after a specific duration has reached. So once that is done, you can define how this timer should be started. So I'm going to say return or delete the content based on when it was created, or you can define when it was last modified or when it was labeled. So I'm going to click next, and I can review my settings. If I'm happy with my settings, I can click create this label. It will take a few seconds, and then the label will be created. Although you create this particular label, users will not be able to apply this label to any of the content that they are stored in Office 365. For users to be able to apply this label to their content, you need to create a label policy. Under label policies, you can create a new label publishing policy by clicking on the publish labels button, and you can choose what labels you need to be published. And I'm going to select the new label that we created, label 1. And I'm going to select locations where I need to publish this label. I'm going to say publish it to all locations, including contents in Exchange email, Office 365 groups, OneDrive, and SharePoint documents. If I do not want to apply it to all locations, then I can define specific locations where I need to this label be applied. So I can switch on or off workloads, or if, I can define specific sites for SharePoint, or recipients for email, accounts for OneDrive, or groups for Office 365 groups. If I select individual recipients, sites, counts, or groups, then this policy will publish that particular label to those specific locations. Or else if you select exclude, then what happens is without defining specific individual locations, if you are excluding individual sites, recipients, accounts, or groups, then this policy will publish the label to all the locations except for these individual entities. Once that is done, you can click next, and you can give a name to your policy. I'm going to say policy 1. And these policies will take about 1 day to be appear across your environment. However, if the if any user's mailbox is less than 10 megabytes, the label will not be available for them in their Outlook or Outlook web app. Once you're satisfied with your settings, in the review section, you can click on Publish Labels. It will take a few seconds, and it will create the policy, and then it will start publishing the label across your environment. So you can see a summary of your configuration setting, and if you're satisfied with it, you can click close, or else you can edit the policy and fine tune the way you want. Now, when you create a publishing policy, it will publish the label to the locations you define, and it will allow users to tag their content based on the label or the content and as they see fit. However, there could be information that you want to be protected at all times, regardless of whether users are tagging them or not. For example, company financial data or employee records. These records are critical to an organization, and if some user forgets to tag it with the correct label, then the correct protection policies will not be applied to the document. So to avoid that, you can use auto apply a label policy, and when you do that, you can define a label. So I'm going to choose the label, so label 1, add, and I'm going to click next. And I'm going to apply this label based on multiple ways. So I can either apply the label to contents that contain sensitive information. Those sensitive information are Microsoft defined information types. So these are commonly known information types in multiple regions. So these can be bank account formats, credit card numbers, social security numbers, uh, uh, health data, or privacy data. So you can either pick from those sensitive information types, or else you can apply a label to content that contains specific words or phrases. So it is understood that not every region, every country, or every organization will be able to utilize predefined sensitive information types. They may have different formats or different types of data in their environment. So they will be able to use these custom keywords or phrases to identify their content in this in the Office 365 and apply protection. So before we go into that, we'll see what are the sensitive information types we have. So I'm going to select this and click next. And I can select what type of information do I need to protect. So from financial, I have multiple financial types of data, Australia financial data, Canada financial data likewise. So you can filter it based on the country or region. Uh, from here, you can see that, or else you have medical and health data. Again, you can filter it based on the country or region. And you have privacy data. Again, you can filter it based on the country or region. Or else, if you do not find what you are looking for here, then you can create a custom um, sensitive information type from here as well. And if you go back and then if you choose to, if you are not going to use any of the information, sensitive information types that were available to you, you can choose to have custom keywords and phrases. So to do that, you need to select apply label to content that contains specific words or phrases, and then click next. Once you do that, you can add keywords here or phrases. So you can add that, and then you can click next. You can provide a name for your policy. I'm going to say auto applying policy 1 and provide a description. And then you can apply this to all locations, or you can apply it to specific locations. And then you can click on auto apply. It will take about 7 days to automatically apply labels because it needs to scan your environment and identify what are the types of data that you have and match the policy according to the configuration criteria you have defined. Now the status is on and is pending because it's scanning your environment to apply this data. And once that is done, it will be in effect. So you can click close. And then you have sensitive information types. When you click on it, you can see all the available sensitive information types in Office 365. So we have at the moment 82 items that you can use to to classify your data or to protect your data. If you do not find what you want here, you can always create a custom information type, or else you can protect based on the keywords as well. The next one is data loss prevention. Under policy, you can create multiple policies. These policies will monitor your Office 365 environment, either all locations or specific locations you mention, and it will monitor for content that matches the criteria you define and will trigger alerts or take actions that you define to take based on the detection of the content types. So to create a policy, you can click on the create a policy button, and then you can pick the type of the data you want. If you do not find what you want here, you can always start from your scratch. And I'm going to create a custom policy. I'm going to click next. And from here, I'm going to give a name. And I'm going to click next. And I'm going to pick locations. I'm just going to say apply this to specific locations. And I'm going to pick a OneDrive account. And then I'm going to customize the type of content I want to protect. So there are two options. There are two main options. The first one is find content that contains, and I can pick the types of the data, or else I can go on to advanced settings. Before going to advanced settings, I will first try to configure this with in the simplest way. So I'm going to pick the types of data that I want. So I'm going to either add sensitive info types or labels that I have already created. So as I said, if you do not find what you want in the sensitive info types, you can create a label, publish it to apply automatically, and then use that label to apply this DLP policy to protect the content of your data. So I'm going to select label, and I'm going to pick the label that we created earlier, add done, and I'm going to protect the content that is tagged with this particular label. And I'm going to click save. And then I am going to say detect when this content is shared with people outside my organization or only with people inside my organization. So I'm just going to say with people outside my organization. So whenever content that is labeled with this particular label is shared outside my organization, this policy will find that and will alert me on that. And once that is done, you can click next and review your settings and be done with it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use advanced settings to do some fine tuning of this policy. So I'm going to select use advanced settings and click next. And then I'm going to add a new role. So I'm going to give a role name and I'm going to define the conditions. So the conditions are again similar to what you saw earlier, either sensitive info types or labels. I'm going to pick the label that I want to protect. So I'm going to say documents labeled with label 1, add, done. And then I'm going to add a condition. I'm going to add the condition. The condition is when the content is shared with people outside my organization. And then I'm going to take an action. The action would be to restrict access to the content. So I'm going to say only people outside the organization. People inside the organization will continue to have access. That is totally fine. And then I'm going to enable user notifications. So when you enable it, by default, it will notify the user who sent, shared, or last modified the content. Or else, if you want additional users to be notified of this, then you can enable this. And the person who sent, shared, or modified the content, as well as I'm going to be able to select additional people or owner of the SharePoint site or OneDrive account as well. And then I can customize the email text, the notification email text if I want. I'm not going to do that right now, so I'm going to skip it. And then if I want, I can customize the policy tip text as well. So I'm not going to do any of that customizations right here. So I'm going to skip it to user overrides. So when you enable user overrides, this will allow you to let users to override the policy and share the content anyway. So if you enable this, then you can require users to provide a business justification or else to override the rule automatically if users are reporting this as a false positive. So there can be times when you apply this policy into a location and this can be applied to a document that is not a confidential document that you want to protect. So at that time, users will be able to report it as a false positive and override this particular rule. Therefore, you will have to make sure that you are not enabling this for critical locations where you have your critical information, because users will still be able to override the rule and share it with people outside the organization if they have a malicious intent. So after that, then you can generate incident reports. So you can define the severity of how this particular incident being logged in the alerts section. So you can pick from either low, medium, or high. And then you can choose to receive an alert to admins when a rule match occurs. And you can define the admins. By default, your account is taken, and you can add additional people as well. And then you can request to receive reports to your mailbox. So when you enable it, you can define what are the fields you want to receive, what are the information you want to receive, and you can add additional people and then click save. So here you have the first rule. Likewise, you can create multiple rules and you can set them either to switch on or off. Once you're satisfied with your configuration, you can click next and you can switch it on or you can test it first or you can keep it switched off until you switch it on later on. So I'm just going to say yes, turn it on right away, and then I'm going to click next, and I'm going to create. So it will take a few seconds. Once that is done, you will be able to see the summary on your right hand side of the screen. And if you're satisfied with it, you can click close, or else you can edit these settings to fine tune your requirement and protect your content. So once that is done, we will move to device security policies. This will help you to protect your corporate data when users are trying to access them using their mobile phones. For an example, when they try to access emails from their mobile phone, you can configure these policies to require certain security settings in their mobile device before they can access emails. So you can click on Create Policy, and then you can provide a name, mobile device policy 1, and then you can define what are the requirements to have on the device, and whether you want to block access and report the violation, or allow access if the device is not meeting the above requirements. And next you can define additional configurations, and once that is done, you can click next, and you can switch on it, and you can define the security group that you want to apply this. This These settings are not applied for individual users. These are applied for security groups. So once that is done, you can click next. You can review your settings and then click create this policy, and it will take a few seconds, and once that is done, it will show you the summary and you can move forward. So as you can see here, the policy is turning on. It will take a few minutes, and then it will turn on for the security group that I have defined. The next one is app permission. Again, I'm not going to talk about app permissions here because it requires Office 365 Cloud App Security. So I'm going to skip that one and go on to device management. The device management is capable of letting you view the device properties, create reports, and wipe devices if you have a need. And if you have an Intune subscription, then you will not be able to use it. You will have to use Intune for all your mobile device management in Office 365. So I'm just going to exit from this. And the next one is data governance. So we have the dashboard here again. It gives you an at a glance view of your environment as to what are the data governance information that we can have a look at it. So you can see there are a couple of tiles as it with the home page. You can see the current status of online archives, the retention policies, and your content at a glance. What are the types of data that you have in your environment and the amount of it? And then your content over time, you can view how your content have grown. Everything you can see from the dashboard. You can go to import, and import will allow you to ship your PSD files in hard disks to Office 365, or else import them over the network and to users. The next one is archive. The archive section will allow you to manage online archives for your users. You can enable or disable online archives for users and view the status of the usage as well. The retention section will show you all the retention policies that you have created. You can create individual retention policies here, or else you will be able to see all the retention configuration that you have done at the classification section as well. So when you want to create a retention policy, you can click on create button, and from here you can provide a name, click next, and you can define what kind of retention you want to do here. And I'm going to say just to retain it for 7 years based on it when it was created, and I do not want to delete it after this time, and then I'm going to click next, and I'm going to select the locations that I need to apply this I can select Sky for Business, and I have to pick users um, to apply this particular retention policy. And once that is done, now I'm going to click next, and I can review this. And if you turn on preservation lock here, this particular retention policy will be preserved. You will not be able to delete this or do any you will not be able to turn off or delete this particular policy. You will only be able to add new stuff to keep or delete, extend the time frame of the retention, or and extend the age of when the content is should be deleted. So this policy will be locked in your environment, and you will not be able to delete it if you turn on preservation lock. So I'm not going to turn on the preservation lock here. I'm just going to do not turn on preservation lock. But let me show you what happens when you try to turn on. You will be presented with a warning saying this will not be able to turn off or delete it. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to turn on preservation lock and click next. You can review your settings, and you can create this policy to create it. It will take about 1 day to apply the retention policy to the locations you have. So it will take a few seconds. Once that is done, you can view a summary of your setting here, and you can click close if you're satisfied, or else you can edit the policy and fine tune it. The next one is supervision. In the supervision, you can create supervision policies to help managers to monitor their subordinates. So I have come across organizations where management asks to create transport rules in the backend to forward their employees' emails to them, or else to add them as delegates to their subordinates' mailboxes to monitor their communication. But that is a hassle because you will be seeing a lot of unnecessary communication stuff as well. So what what Office 365 is capable of is it will allow you to configure supervision policies, and you can define the type of the data you want to monitor in their communication, and you will be able to evaluate them as and when you need. So to create a supervision policy, you can create one by clicking on the button, provide a name. I'm going to say Super1 as the name. You can provide a description and click next, and you can define the users or groups who you want to supervise. I'm just going to pick 2 or 3 users randomly, um, just for the demo purposes. And once that is done, I can click next. And if you selected a group here, you can exclude specific users from that particular group, so that this policy will only be supervising the rest of the users, except for these users who are in the exclude these users list. And I'm going to click next. And I can define the direction of the communication that happens, whether it's inbound emails or outbound emails, or if the communications or the internal communication. So I can define the direction, and then I can add conditions. So I can say messages, the size is larger than, I will say, uh, 2 MB. I'm going to supervise all of the messages, and then I'm going to click next. And I can define the percentage of the emails that I want to supervise. So if you are a supervisor who just need to randomly pick and select the messages and review them, this is a good option. You can define the volume of data you want to review. So Office 365 will automatically pick data randomly and be made available for you to review. If you want to review all of the content, then you can define 100% and click next. And then you can define the reviewers. So I'm just going to say this user will be the reviewer for this particular policy. And then I'm going to click next. I can review my settings, and if I'm happy with it, and then I'm going to click finish. So when you create a policy, once the policy is created, the supervisors will be an add-on automatically to Outlook Web App. If the user is not using Outlook Web App and is using Outlook client, then there is a knowledge base article in Microsoft that they will have to follow to access this content in the supervision policy. So once I'm done, I'm going to click finish, and it will save the policy. It will take a few seconds, and then I will be able to see it on the right hand side of my screen. So once that is done, I can see the status of it. It's still in the activating status. So once that is done, I will be able to edit the policy or delete the policy. For the moment, I'm just going to click close and skip that and move on to the next section. The next one is threat management. Again, we have a dashboard here. We will be able to see the current uh, threat status to your environment. So you can see vehicle threat detections, malware families, malware trends, top targeted users. Likewise, this stuff you can see here. Again, this dashboard is not customizable. The tiles are not customizable. And then you can go to Explorer and view the current detections of malware and other stuff here as well. So if there are any alerts, if there are any information that you need to be viewed, so you will be able to view those in this particular report. So as you can see here, so these are the all emails report in your environment. And then the next one is review. When you go to review, you can review certain activities that is pertaining to your environment. So here you can view the protection status, incidents, quarantine, and user-reported email messages. So basically, some of the information that you see here will not be available based on the subscription that you have. So I'm just going to skip this one and go into the policy here. So you can configure policies for your anti-malware, your ATP safe attachments, ATP safe links, anti-spam, and DKIM. So this information will be managed under threat management. And then you have search and investigation. The first one is content search. The content search will allow you to search for content in your organization in Office 365. So this content can be in users' mailboxes or in SharePoint sites. You will be able to conduct a search, and you can provide keywords. So based on the keyword that you are defining, you will be able to see the search results here, and then export these results for additional reviews or keep them in a hold. So the next one is audit log search. The audit log in Office 365 logs each and every activity that users are performing. So all of the activities, including user activities, admin activities, and system account activities, are logged in this audit log. So you can search for specific activity in your environment, or you can define the date range, and you can define specific users or all users, and you can either check for activities of a specific file, folder, or site as well. So I'm just going to search for all activities here for all users. So it will take a few seconds or minutes based on the number of items in that log or number of days that it has to search for in the log. And from here you can see the date, the IP address, the user, the activity, and the item that this activity has been happened on. And it's not just user accounts, it is picking up system accounts as well, as you can see here. So let's go to eDiscovery. So eDiscovery section helps you with conducting legal investigation in your environment. So I have one case here in the status of closing status. So let me open this one and show you the current settings there. So when you open an eDiscovery case, you can put content onto hold, or you can search for content and then you can export the content that you have searched. So this will help you with conducting investigations on your users without alarming them. If they are found to be involved in malicious activities in your organization, such as corporate data leakage, confidential data leakage. So you will be able to conduct investigations on their communications and then put their mailboxes on hold, or get a copy of their mailbox for further investigations as well. So I'm going to just close this one. And then we have productivity app discovery. Again, I'm not going to discuss about this because this requires Office 365 Cloud App Security. I'm not going to talk about it here, so I'm just going to skip that and go to reports. So on the reports dashboard, we have multiple reports here. We have DLP policy matches, DLP false positives, ATP file types. Likewise, we have many reports here. So you can weave them in nice graphs and charts. If you want to see more detailed information about a report, you can click on it and it will open that particular report, and you will be able to see the uh, information included in that particular report. Also, when you are weaving a report like this, you can create a schedule for that particular report so that you will receive emails, emails with this particular report. And to create a schedule, you can create a schedule button and you can just go with the default settings, or else you can customize the schedule and configure it the way you want. You can either have it weekly or monthly, and you can define the start date, and if you want to stop it at a specific date, you can do that as well. And then click next, and you can apply filters, and you can click next. You can add the recipients and click save. So once that is done, you will be able to manage these schedules from manage schedule section. Here you will be able to see all the reports that you have scheduled or by others who have scheduled. And the next one is for reports for download. This will allow you to download any reports, any custom reports that you have requested. Um, and you will be able to download and view those reports from the reports down for download section. The next section is service assurance. In the dashboard, you will be able to see what's new for service assurance and description about it. And the compliance reports have all the third-party reports on Office 365 and Microsoft Azure data centers. The trust documents include the current security and the overall data governance in their data centers. And then audited controls are showing the recent uh, standard regulations that have been audited and when it was tested, the number of controls tested, the test results for that specific control as well. In the settings here, you will be able to define your region and your industry. And once that is done, you will be able to weave specific reports for that particular um, industry. So that wraps up the Security and Compliance Center in Office 365. Hope this helped you with understanding Office 365 Security and Compliance Center.